Section 36 of A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4, by Henry Charles LEA, Book 8, Chapter 8, Part 4, Spheres of Action, Sorcery, and Occult Arts. Procedure in cases of sorcery had little to distinguish it from that in ordinary heresy, except that, as a rule, torture was not employed. One authority, indeed, tells that, although in Italy torture was used in cases of heretical sorcery, it was never used in Spain; but another assumes that, in certain cases, it was at the discretion of the tribunal. That this discretion was used is seen in the Mexican case of Isabel de Montoya, a wretched old woman, in 1652, who freely confessed to numerous devices for procuring money, charms and philters and conjurations. In addition to this was the evidence of her dupes, as to her stories of her relations with the demon, which required elucidation. She was tortured without extracting further confessions, and then was sentenced to 100 lashes, 3 years' service in a hospital, and perpetual exile from Puebla. As pact with the demon was the basis of inquisitorial jurisdiction over sorcery, it was important to obtain from the accused admission of its existence. To this end, in 1655, the Suprema issued special instructions as to examination in all cases dependent on pact, instructions which reveal implicit belief in the reality of the powers claimed for sorcery. The accused was to be asked if the prayers, remedies, and other things employed produced the expected results, wholly or partially, and, as they had not the natural virtues to effect this, what was the cause of the result. When, in the prayers or conjurations, certain demons were invoked, was it to make them appear and speak, and in what mode or form? Whether the invocation was in virtue of a pact, express or tacit, with the demon, and if so, in what way had it been made? Whether the demon sometimes appeared in consequence of the prayers or conjurations, and if so, in what figure or guise, and what he said or did? With what faith or belief they did these things and framed the remedies, and whether it was with the intention and hope that the desired effect should be produced, and with the belief that they would attain it, and whether they held this for certain, with other similar interrogatories suited for particular cases. Based on these instructions, a curious series of formulas was drawn up, adapted to all the different classes of offenders. As a sample of these we may take the one used in the examination of Zahories, who assumed to have a natural gift to see under the surface of the earth, involving no heresy, so that they were subject to the Inquisition only through an arbitrary assumption that their work must necessarily require the aid of the demon, in which there was no parvitas materia, and that it was a mortal sin to employ them. The Zahori is to be asked whether it is true that he can see clearly and distinctly what is hidden under the earth, and to what distance his vision penetrates; whether this power is confined to buried treasure, or extends to other things; at what age and on what occasion he first recognized the possession of this power; whether it is continuous, or stronger at times than at others; whether he has exerted this power and has found it effective; whether he has thus obtained treasures, and, if so, of what kind or amount; who assisted him, and whether the treasures were divided, and what then happened; whether to reach the treasure, either in preparation or at the time of raising it, anything else was done, such as masses, prayers, conjurations, fumigations, invocations of saints or of other unknown names, or use was made of holy water, blessed palms, lights, genuflections, reading from a book or paper, or other similar means; whether some treasures are more difficult to obtain than others, and if so, from what cause, such as enchantment; whether Zahories have any sign by which this power is recognized, and whether they recognize each other; in what principally does this power consist; whether money has been paid to him for pointing out a place where treasure was hidden, and if so, where he received it, and what was the spot designated. We can readily see how apt would be such an interrogatory, followed up by a trained examiner, to lead to admissions justifying implied pact, especially as there was a craze for finding buried treasure, and a widespread belief that stores of it were hidden underground, awaiting the coming of Antichrist, and guarded by demons, who must be placated or subdued before the gold could be secured. In all this, it is evident that the inquisitor, if conscientious, must himself have been firmly convinced of the truth that all the arts of sorcery, simple as many of them were based on demonic aid. Yet the occasional use of the term embustero shows that it was sometimes recognized that there was imposture as well as pact. Thus, in the Cordova auto of December 21, 1627, 3 women appeared: Ana de Jodar, sentenced to 200 lashes in Cordova, and 100 in Villanueva del Arzobispo, with 6 years of exile; Maria de San Leon to 100 lashes and 4 years of exile; and Francisca Mendez to vergüenza and exile. Now all these were declared to be sorceresses, invokers of demons with whom they had pacts, and their feats, as detailed in the sentences, showed them to be adepts, and yet they were all stigmatized in addition as embusteras. So, in the Saragossa auto of June 6, 1723, Sebastian Gomez is described as supersticioso y embustero, though his sentence of 200 lashes and perpetual service in a hospital with shackles on his feet shows that his offense was not regarded as mere imposture. Severe as may seem some of the sentences alluded to, there is no question that, in most cases, the delinquents were fortunate in having the Inquisition as a judge, rather than the secular courts, which everywhere showed themselves merciless where sorcery was concerned. We have seen the demand in 1598 for the revival of the savage law of 1414, and this rigor had the support not only of popular opinion, but of the learned. Ciruelo taught that all vain superstitions and sorcery were inventions of the devil, wherefore those who learned and practiced them were disciples of the devil and enemies of God. There was no distinction between classes of offenders; all were to be persecuted with unsparing rigor. Thieves, he argued, were properly hanged or beheaded, because every thief is presumed to be a homicide, and much more should it thus be with every sorcerer, as his efforts were directed rather against persons than property. Torreblanca tells us that Huss and Wycliffe and Luther and almost all heretics contend against the punishment of sorcerers, but this is heretical, detestable, and scandalous, and all orthodox authorities teach that they should be unsparingly put to death, and to be persecuted by both the spiritual and temporal swords. It is well to bear in mind this consensus of opinion when considering the practice of the Inquisition. In the tribunals there was nothing to control the discretion of the judges save the Suprema, and that discretion showed itself in a leniency difficult to understand, more often than in undue harshness, and even their harshness was less to be dreaded than the mercy of the secular law. The systematic writers lay down the rule that if the culprit confesses to pact with the demon, he is presumably an apostate; if he begs mercy, he is to be admitted to reconciliation in an auto, with confiscation and 100 lashes or vergüenza; if he is not an apostate, The reconciliation is modified to abjuration de levi and the scourging to vergüenza. These rules, however, were not observed. Reconciliation was exceedingly rare. Abjuration de vehemente was unusual. Abjuration de levi almost universal. And the tribunals exercised wide discretion in the infliction of the most diverse penalties. A few cases will illustrate how completely the temper of the tribunal influenced the sentences. In 1604, Valencia seems to have had exceptionally lenient inquisitors. Alonso Verlango, desiring to compromise a suit, hired a woman to perform the conjuration of the ampolletas or vials, placing in them wine, sulphur, and other things, and throwing them into the fire, with the adjuration that as they burnt, so might the hearts of men come to an agreement. There was also the conjuration of the oranges, cutting 9 of them, and placing in them oil, soap, salt, and other things, with the formula that, as oil gives flavor, so might it be with the men, also driving a nail into each, and saying that the nails were driven into their hearts. In both of these conjurations were invoked Bersabu, Satanas, and other demons, the great and the crippled, along with St. Peter, St. Paul, and other saints. There was also a long conjuration with a virgin child, by which one could learn whatever was desired. Verlango himself, moreover, used conjurations to discover treasures, and possessed the dream book of Solomon, Vaquerio, and Cardan de proprietatibus rerum. For all this he escaped with a reprimand and a hearing mass in the audience chamber, abjuration de levi, and 2 years of exile. Another case was that of Fray Miguel Rechaque, a priest of the order of Montesa, who denounced himself for going with an Italian fraile, a virgin girl, and some others to discover treasure. They dug a hole. The Italian, with an olive wand, made a circle in which was lighted a blessed candle. Incense was burnt, and the angels were summoned to drive away the demons guarding the treasure for the coming of Antichrist, and there was also a response from a demon obtained by the girl looking into a mirror. When the papers were submitted to the Suprema, it ordered Rechaque to be reprimanded and the case to be suspended, while the girls who officiated had only a year's exile and some spiritual penances. More serious was the case of François Dufour, a French priest, and Francisco Juseria, a student, for it involved sacrilege. They sought the advice of an adept, who told them to baptize 3 coins with certain names, and the coins, when paid out, would return to their purses. Dufour solemnly baptized 3 pesos. Juseria spent them for fritters and pastry, but they did not come back. Under instructions of a confessor, they denounced themselves. They were duly tried and sentenced to abjure de levi, to be severely reprimanded, and to perform some slight spiritual penances. End of section 36. Recording by Linda Johnson.